The humans have withdrawn their contract for the combat drones, announced Ryliath, ID Defense Systems liaison officer to the human homeworld. Explain, demanded Ryliath, the CEO. Ryliath shrugged, a mannerism she had picked up from long exposure to the humans. Ryliath grimaced but did not comment. Such peculiarities were an occupational hazard for liaison officers, and typically indicated that they were good at their job. The combat drone program ran by their military has been a failure, she explained. Does this mean that they are terminating all their contracts with us? Gasped Ryliath in alarm. She was the head of R&D, and was currently overseeing development of a multi-billion credit contract to design and produce exosuits for human soldiers. A contract that had the potential to raise her illustrious career to even greater heights. No, they still want all current contracts fulfilled. In fact, they seem eager to expand their business with us, replied Ryliath. It's just the combat drones project that has failed, and their generals were fairly satisfied that it wasn't our fault. Regardless whose fault it was, we require further explanation, insisted Ryliath. Over 24 species use our combat drones. We must find out what issues the humans have. This could cause irreparable damage to our stocks. With the board's permission, began Ryliath, inserting a data chip into the conference room's projector, I shall outline the main points of our combat drone program with the humans. ID Defense Systems were first approached by the human governing body, the United Nations, about 10 standard years ago to augment their military with combat drones. The plan was the same as all our other drone programs. Augment their frontline infantry with our combat drones to reduce biological casualties and fatalities. Like most species we have worked with, the United Nations ruled out an all-drone army on the grounds that they didn't trust robots acting alone to conduct themselves in accordance with local and galactic laws. We designed the first of the HCD series within a couple of years, and began rollout of a pilot scheme within 5 years of first being approached. As is our standard practice, we created a species-tailored combat drone built to resemble a baseline of that species. In the case of humans, 2 legs, 2 arms, a head atop the torso. The full details are provided in Appendix C of my report. The prototype units, the HCD-1000 model, stood 6 feet tall in human measurements, and the head was left blank of any facial features, simply a blank panel covering the sensors and hardware. The idea was, a human-like drone could operate their weapons and vehicles without requiring they be modified. It could also wear human camouflage uniforms to blend in better. The prototype units were sent out to frontline units throughout the United Nations military. The UN are engaged against pirates and insurgent groups on a number of battlefields, and we, and the United Nations Security Council, felt these were perfect environments for an initial test of the drones. Of course, we were very confident, as over 24 species used our drones in everything from law enforcement to full-scale wars, and only the physical configuration of the HCD series was experimental. All the software and programming was battle-tested across the galaxy. The problems began subtly. The UN troops who got the prototypes began to name them, and began to refer to them by these names and not by serial numbers or approved designations. They gave them insignia and unit patches, and some squads painted the chassis to more easily identify different units. We put this down to humans being uncomfortable with the concept of autonomous machines, and trying to make them more bearable to look at. We were wrong. After that, we began to notice that all but the most terminally damaged units were repaired and sent back to combat rather than being replaced or recycled. At the time, we put this down to a desire to save money, or misunderstanding of how the units learned. Perhaps the humans believed that the experience gained by a unit was limited to each individual unit. Again, we were wrong. The first serious incident happened with a squad of UN troops combating pirates in the outer reaches. One of their HCD units, HCD-1022, was seriously damaged after breaching a pirate ship and being caught by a booby trap. The unit was damaged almost beyond repair. Regulations stated that damage to that extent meant the unit should be recycled. The entire squad accompanied the remains of the unit to our workshops in their base. When our technicians informed the squad that they'd receive a new model, a number of soldiers became visibly emotional and insisted that they didn't want a new model. They wanted us to fix Logan. Apparently this was what they called the unit. Their use of human pronouns, they called it he and him, not it, should also have tipped off our technicians that something was wrong, but they were using a universal translator and were not well versed in human behaviour. Unfortunately, a junior technician told the squad leader that the unit would be recycled, at which point a soldier drew his sidearm and threatened to shoot the technician if he tried to hurt Logan. While his squad leader was able to persuade the soldier to holster his weapon, other members of the squad removed the damaged unit and brought it to human technicians to try and get it repaired. The full details of this incident can be found in Appendix J. We began to canvass the squads involved in the pilot scheme after this incident, and we discovered that the soldiers have formed emotional attachments to the units. All have been named, most have been cosmetically altered to make them appear more individual, and some units had their learning programs altered to allow them to simulate a rapport with the human soldiers. A full list is available in Appendix K, but there are a few particularly noteworthy examples. Many squads uploaded the rules for various ball or card games to their units, and had the units join them in these games during recreation time. A squad that was granted 2 weeks shore leave took their assigned unit with them against standing orders, and several of their photos depicted them engaged in various recreational activities, accompanied by the unit. When questioned, they simply replied that Vakara had worked just as hard as anyone else. Again, please note the humanizing language, and she deserved a break as well. However, the most serious incident, listed in Appendix N, was what caused the Security Council to cancel the contract. A UN light infantry squad was attacked by a group of insurgents on Ryliath. The insurgents took out their HCD unit, HCD 1095 first, it being the most serious threat, and the squad were able to take cover behind a building. According to the after-action report, they then had the opportunity to retreat unscathed, but opted instead to go back into a kill zone of effective enemy fire to rescue the drone. There were sharp intakes of breath throughout the conference room. Ryliath continued. 3 soldiers died, 4 more were seriously injured, 2 barely enough to be discharged on medical grounds. A nearby QRF had to be deployed to pull the squad out, which led to a full-scale firefight with the insurgents. 16 civilians died in the crossfire, with upwards of 30 injured. All because the squad wouldn't leave a damaged combat drone behind. "What did the survivors say?" asked Ryliath. They said that Cujo has saved each of their lives many times over, and they couldn't just leave him to die. Even with the deaths of 19 biologicals, which they expressed regret for, they still didn't seem to think their reasoning had been in error. Dead silence. Their Security Council held a full investigation. They decided that the advantages of the program were outweighed by recent developments, and it was likely, due to the high durability of the HCD models, that there would be a repeat of the Ryliath incident, perhaps even worse. They made the decision to cancel the contract, but submitted their full apologies, and insisted that we were not at fault. Ryliath looked around the room. They still want all the other contracts fulfilled, the exosuits, power armor, new vehicle designs, and they have implied that they may revisit the drone program in some years' time, provided we can design a suitably inhuman drone. Their words. Ryliath shook his head. 24 species use these drones. They aren't biologicals, they aren't alive, they don't feel anything. They aren't even intelligent, it's just simulated by code. Everyone else understands this, why can't the humans? Ryliath shrugged once again. They tried to explain it to me several times, But I couldn't understand it either, she admitted. It seems to be a trait peculiar to humans. Apparently, they call it anthropomorphism.